You are listening to a White Phosphorus Pictures podcast.
Broadcasting under the night sky from the edge of an undisclosed jungle on the Gulf of Mexico, I'm Christopher Garitano, your voice in the night. For the next hour, allow me to be your guide into the bizarre unknown, the fantastic macabre, and together we'll journey to that borderland between fiction and reality, a place beyond all rational explanation. We are now off to the witch. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Off to the Witch podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Garitano, and it's been a little while since I've made an episode. So, as many of my regular listeners know, I have been busy making a series of Off to the Witch Presents TV specials, feature-length documentaries, in my style, of course, so there are many movie scenes, cinematic scenes, and vignettes, and ideas that most likely would have been very difficult to get to the screen for various reasons in a network situation. A little bit about the origins of this new project. I previously made a show called Strange World for Discovery and Travel Channel, and it was an extraordinary experience learning everything from top to bottom on how a television show is made, and considerably quickly. Now, whereas that was in the millions, the budget, my new show and series isn't. However, my advantage is attention to detail and not rushing through the situation. Now, it's still getting completed in a relatively short period of time, considering that it was made by a very small group of people this time out. And the network show, Strange World, was collectively created by myself and a larger group of people with a lot of money and a lot of moving parts, but in a short period of time. And I think that is the Achilles heel of the network system, is that they get these shows greenlit. Mine was greenlit pretty quick because my previous special was highly rated, The Dark Files for History Channel, and there were some people that wanted to make a show with me at a different network. So that was fortuitous, but at the same time, it works against you because you have all this time in preparation. I'd say we had about 6 months in pre-production officially and development. And before that, myself alone was 6 months in designing the show before I even pitched it. When you finally get to the situation where you're making the show, now you're on the road. Now it's lightning speed. And no matter how much money is behind it and how many people are helping, you're trying to fit this gargantuan amount of work in a 6-month period. Essentially, we were on the road for 6 months. I think I was on the road for 7, doing the final narration and recording in the city of Tampa. Luckily, I didn't have to travel after that. But I was on the road all around the United States and Canada for 6 months making Strange World with a traveling group of on and off. Nearly 30 at times, we would hire locally. And then a home base group of about the same. And of course, when you get a little further than halfway, you're at a fever pitch trying to get it done. So the money doesn't matter. The network label doesn't matter. You have human beings now exerting themselves, spreading themselves thin. And I think the show came out great regardless, but there were some elements that I wasn't happy with. And, yes, it was my show, but now you're always wrestling for the best ideas. So now I'm in a situation where I'm not wrestling for the best ideas. Now I'm pushing myself for it. I'm the boss, 100%. I'm in control of it. And this is the best show that I've made. This is better than Strange World. It's better than The Dark Files. It's better than my independent documentary Montauk Chronicles. I was ready for this. I was ready. I'd learned so much over the last decade and before that I think it was all priming me for this situation. Luckily, the world of distribution and the world of the consciousness of the audience and the things they want changed over the last 5 years and made way for a lot of incredible independent artists, whether it be making music, writing literature, or making television shows. So this is relatively a new thing in terms of independent production, and where those middlemen that were there before, essentially, I think, stealing from a lot of people, in my opinion, they're dying. And that's a great thing because as an audience, and as I'm someone who loves this stuff, you're going to get to see the best of it. Now, with the freedom for anyone to go and make a show, yeah, you're going to get a lot of junk too, but that's not going to stop talented people from joining forces and making something incredible for the audience, and that's what I want. In the world of the paranormal and supernatural, and this is a subject matter that I have been interested in and immersed in since I was a child, that I want more out of it. One thing that I miss, and I think this is where what I was talking about previously about the rapid fire schedule came into play, and that the networks don't want to invest too much money. They want it quick, dirty, and easy, and that's why you have shows like Ghost Adventures and stuff like that that repeat themselves over and over and over again. Is that hey, if some people like that stuff, fine, but I think you have to imagine, what could you imagine that's better than that? I can imagine quite a few things. So, and I know there are other movie makers and producers and writers out there that are like, hey man, we can make something better than this. If this is all the studios and networks have to offer, let's do something better. And you're not going to do it within their realm, so you have to do it outside. Well, now those distribution walls fell, and you just have to have the guts and take the risk. So that's what I did with this new series. And I made it for you. I made it for me too, but I made it for you. I made something special. So it's going to give you everything that's good, I guess, about the last 20 years of paranormal TV. And I would say the ratio of good to bad, good is much lower. But the best of what came before it, and then something fresh, something you haven't seen before, a format that is new, a format that takes essentially the wonder and the mystery of the paranormal and bringing it to the screen for you to experience. Regardless of everything that's been discovered and everything that's been discussed and all the people that claim they're experts on the supernatural and the paranormal and on conspiratorial subjects, there are no experts because a lot of these people can't show you a lick of proof. They talk big and deliver little. So I want to go back to mystery, and I want to go back to human experience. That's the thing. That's the thing that interests me the most, is that an ordinary life where you can either be walking through the woods, you can be in your home, or walking through the city, or in dreamland, wherever it may be, and you experience something extraordinary. Something at first that you're reluctant to tell people about. And what is the feeling? What does it do to the psyche? What does it do to the human being, to the human consciousness? And how it affects us? And the art of storytelling. This is something that interests me. And I think if you start with that purpose to want to do something better for the world, better for the audience, your result is going to be better. I don't buy it. I don't buy that people just want something on in the background. I know some people like to do that, and I think that attests to the success of some of this really lame television, is that it's just something to keep them company. They throw it on in the background. Because I've listened and I've watched some of these things, and man, if I saw that stuff when I was a kid, I wouldn't be interested in it. The things that blew me away as a kid are the exact things that I'm telling you about. The mystery and the depth and storytelling and the fact that it could happen to me out of the blue. So when an ordinary person is dealing with something they cannot explain and it happens out of the blue. Now, there have been quite a few credible people that wanted to get into the why and perhaps how this stuff has happened. Some of those people worked in parapsychology units, namely Barry Taff and Thelma Moss in the early 70s. There are so-called ufologists that have a basis in astrophysics. Their education is in astrophysics. And they try to bring that over to explain some of the things that happen. But nobody's an expert in ufology. They might have read a ton of books on the subject, but most of which is conjecture. Even the things that are happening now, it seems like everyone's talking a big game, and they're spreading information, but there's nobody that seems to have the true answers. For all of the talk and all the people that claim they're experts, at the end of the day, they really have nothing to deliver, and I think it's very self-serving on their part. So I don't want to give that to you. You won't see the typical talking heads in my shows and in my movies forthcoming. It's about human experience, about something honest and genuine that I feel and experience along the way, that I discover in the people that I'm profiling, and in the situations and the history and the research, because there's some great stuff throughout history. And there are fantastic stories out there currently. But I think you have to dig for them, and you really have to be cautious as to who you're talking about if you're into this stuff. I think it's a privilege and a unique experience to see a ghost, to experience something of the supernatural. And we cheapen it by having, thousands and thousands of people come out of the woodwork on a nightly basis and just claim they're having, they're seeing leprechauns and pink elephants and whatever they're claiming to see. So I'm working against that. I want to go back to the extraordinary, something unique, something that happens out of the blue to an ordinary person, because that's the way it has always happened. When Art Bell began Coast to Coast AM, he was a lone wolf in his house. No one else was doing this. It was something he did, and it was in the middle of the night, all night long. He was broadcasting out of his small place in Nevada. It was like pirate radio in a way, And I remember tuning into that. And there was no such thing as a paranormal podcast. And hey, we have a podcast right here. But I think that it's important, instead of being so self-serving, I think everybody out there that has one of these things, that has a paranormal, and I've seen some good ones, by the way. People are doing exactly what I hope they would be, is that they're exploring the extraordinary happening to an ordinary person, a regular person, and the abruptness of something happening out of the blue. I also want to talk about how people speculate when something extraordinary does happen, and it could just be a very real but odd situation. People immediately want to put something supernatural upon it. And the incident that I'm about to discuss is that I thought it was odd to hear, and it really historically is odd. In Florida, it's very rare, almost not at all, for black bears to attack human beings, let alone kill them. But very recently, there was a black bear attack here in Florida. Let me read you an article to give you a basis in the story. Here's an article from, and this was on a variety of popular publications, but this is from the Associated Press. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has confirmed the first fatal black bear attack in Florida history. This is the first one, resulting in the death of 89-year-old Robert Markle in Jerome, Florida on Monday, May 5th. On Monday morning, the Collier County Sheriff's Office notified Fish and Wildlife staff of a possible fatal wildlife encounter after family members reported a relative missing from his residence and signs of recent disturbances that could have been caused by a bear or bears around the property. FWC officers killed 3 black bears in southwest Florida following a fatal attack on a man and a dog a day earlier. DNA samples from the bears in the attack scene were sent to Gainesville Lab for testing to determine if any of the animals killed Robert Markle near his home early Monday. The Collier County Medical Examiner is still in the process of completing their investigation. but indicated the preliminary cause of death was consistent with injuries caused by a black bear. Results revealed that one bear, 263-pound male, contained the partial remains of the victim. The attack occurred in rural area east of Naples, just south of Big Cypress Wildlife Management Area. Wildlife officers secured the area and set several traps and cameras Monday night. Officials said out of an abundance of caution, the public to remain vigilant and avoid the area. So, mysteriously, they're claiming, and all of the news reports are claiming, and I didn't know, that this was the first black bear attack on recorded history in Florida. And that doesn't normally happen. So I recall when this story first surfaced a couple of weeks ago, that immediately a lot of people in the paranormal world were jumping on it saying it was a werewolf that did it, or it was an angry Sasquatch or the skunk ape. All right, I thought it was odd too. So immediately my imagination considered that possibility, and I'm not dismissing that possibility either. I mean, I've had odd things happen to me, and so my mind is wide open, and I've seen odd things, and I've talked to so many different people, everybody from that have experienced demonic possession, exorcists, deliverance ministers, to working with CIA remote viewer number one, having an odd experience, using the God helmet. I've done so many things and traveled and had these adventures, so my mind is wide open. However, with that, okay, with your mind being open, you also have to enter this situation with a great deal of patience, caution, and objectivity. And it's really important that when someone cries werewolf, you need to start asking questions. You cannot just tell them, "Oh, wow, really? Tell me more." Yeah, you want to hear the story, but we can't get to that point. I think for those of us that have loved these stories over the years and that indulge in them, because a lot of this started in people's childhood, some people have had extraordinary experiences and now they're open to anybody else's. But in the midst of the odd things that have happened that we can't explain, there are tons of lies. And it's been ultimately determined that the black bears did kill this man. The man was in his trailer, Robert, sleeping, and his dog was outside. The bears came, they killed the dog, they killed the man. We hadn't had rain in a little while, so maybe the bears were thirsty, hungry, who knows? But it happened. And at least Fish and Wildlife claim that the remains of the man and the dog were inside the bear's stomach. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of people in the paranormal world that are still crying werewolf over it. My question to those people is, how do you know? There's more evidence to support the fact that the bears did it. So why are you crying werewolf? And most of the people that talk about this stuff and assert this stuff have never even seen one. They claim to have seen them. I've met a lot of people that lie about this stuff. So when you're hearing stuff like that, be really cautious. I would say don't indulge in it, because if there is some kind of shape-shifting human or some kind of canid, humanoid out there, we're not going to find one if we just jump on every story and cry werewolf. It's not going to happen. So I think it's quite ridiculous, to tell you the truth. And, this beloved genre of mystery needs to stay that. Because like I said, to this day, with all the so-called experts out there, none of these mysteries have been solved. They'll talk a good game and they'll start citing this incident and that incident, but at the end of the day, no matter how many government hearings, no matter how many people claim they know or they're an expert or what silly hat they wear, you have found nothing. You found nothing. And there's some great stuff out there, like some incidents that happened 16th century to now that have some serious evidence to support that this extraordinary thing happened. In the case of ghosts, I think some of these devices which I've used do pick up on things. I've heard some extraordinary EVPs, and I had an experience recently with one that I am considering 100% was anomalous and that I'm considering was the spirit of a girl who passed away tragically when she was 16. And why I think it's such a rare thing that it happened by accident while I was making A Haunting We Will Go. And that's how I think this stuff happens. I don't think it happens at every location you go to that you just get this incredible EVP. I don't think it's that easy. I don't think it's as simple as that. However, we do have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people throughout modern recorded history that have seen something in line with a ghost. And I've experienced this stuff myself, so I find it quite believable. The unbelievable is when I'm hearing people on a nightly basis talk about vampires, werewolves, dogmen, as if they're just running rampant around us. And I think that hurts and dampens the quality of what we enjoy so much, which is the mystery. Because it's no longer a mystery if people are claiming these things are running around and these are very thinly drawn stories, to me, that are just the worst fiction that you could imagine. Some of these people are just clearly lying, and people are buying it. And look, I think there are better stories. I know there are better stories. I've found them. So, part of my thing moving forward is I want to find the best of those stories and the most interesting character studies. Even if someone is hoaxing something, I do want to know about why. I want to get into why, and I don't want it to be as lame as they're just looking for, clicks and money on YouTube. That's got to be the most lame thing, to sit in a room and just go on and on about stuff. You're not even getting out of the damn room. So I think it's really important to get out there in the world, to explore things. There are a lot of good investigators out there that are, independent investigators. I would say fascinated people, maybe with no investigating education. They're not former FBI. They're not law enforcement. They're independent, very curious, intellectually curious, spiritually curious people that may have had an experience that go out there and try and figure things out. I've been out there in the woods with some people that have been seeking the Sasquatch, and I was shooting a documentary before the Dark Files was greenlit, and I went out into the woods of Michigan with Joe Stewart. Had an interesting experience. The night started off going deep into the woods. This is northern Michigan. I was staying in a allegedly haunted cabin called Millie's Cabin. The atmosphere was great. And then, we got out into the woods the next night, and just this experience itself was fantastic. But it was dead quiet, and it was just after deer hunting season ended. So there was a chill in the air, and we're out there in the middle of the woods, and Joe is using that wooden instrument called a didgeridoo, and he's blowing into the thing, and he said that usually he'll get a response. So, look, I'm open-minded. I'm standing there waiting to hear something. So he blows into the thing, and now I have all of this on record. I was documenting this, and one day I'll put it out. I'll get back to my ultimate Bigfoot docudrama. But so he blows on the thing, and nothing happens for a little while. Then we start hearing loud crunching. Now, I don't believe that this guy was setting me up just on the dynamics of the day. We went to one place, went to another place. Now we're deep in the woods. There's only one way in. There was no other cars parked there. Joe could have had someone camping out deep in the woods waiting for us, but I don't think so. I'm pretty keen on this stuff. And just the timing of everything, and it wasn't so obvious, and he wasn't really expecting anything to happen. He was trying. So we hear this loud crunching. Then I start hearing an owl. And it didn't, I've heard owls before, and it didn't 100% sound like an owl. It sounded like someone was making, or something was making, owl sounds. And Joe claimed that sound was a Sasquatch. Your imagination runs wild, and you want to believe in these things. And to me, an elusive hominid is much more believable than otter people, werewolves, vampires. I think spiritually, a lot of these things do exist in people. There's an animalistic nature to humans that we tap into. I believe in energy vampires, I believe in parasitic personalities that only prey on people and draw from people. And you can walk into a room with one of these people and you feel drained. You can have a conversation with one of these people and you feel insulted, yet they've never said anything to insult you, not even subtly, not even sarcastically. There's just something about them. They just drain you. And so there's something to that. There's things that affect us on unseen levels, unseen amounts of energy being exerted, or unseen experiences. I believe in that. I believe in all of that. And so I don't know. I just choose to take caution. I choose to take a moment with things because I do take this stuff seriously. And to quote the X-Files, I want to believe. So I don't want to be distracted by people's desire and lust for attention or, oh God, YouTube stuff. I mean, YouTube's a nice tool if you know how to use it. But at the same time, if it's all self-serving, I don't give a damn about what you're doing, And I see a lot of people just, they'll make their stories in AI. I couldn't imagine writing a book, an essay, a screenplay in AI. If you're doing that, you should throw in the damn towel because that stuff's not going to last. As interviews go, something really interesting happened out of the blue once again, and in the midst of all this werewolf talk, and I'm super interested in the subject and the history and folklore because it goes through so many cultures throughout the world and throughout history, shape-shifting and especially into wolves and tigers and different beasts. I think it taps into our savage primal nature. I had an interesting experience. So there was a guy that contacted me out of the blue, and he claims he's a werewolf. So my approach to this isn't, oh, wow, a werewolf just contacted me. Like I'm keeping an open mind, okay? But in the world of psychiatry, lycanthropy exists. It's been called a disorder, but it could be some kind of primal leakage. It could be something that the human being is tapping into. And could I open the field for the fact that this man might be a werewolf? Okay, if he is, I'm happy to see your example. I don't want you to shapeshift in front of me because I grew up on all the great werewolf movies and I know what happens next. So best if you turn on one of these wonderful phones we have now with this incredible video recorder and get a photo of it. Some of the excuses I've heard lately is that with these incredible high-def recorders we have, nothing's going to show up because it's on the ethereal plane. Well, then how did your eyes see it, You didn't see this in a psychic dream. Your optic nerves picked up on it. So the camera should be able to do the same. This wasn't a psychic vision of it. This was real because they're doing real things. They're moving things. They're touching things. They're eating animals. This isn't just some kind of projection from the ethereal plane. This is a physical thing because a lot of the reports that came back of seeing dogmen, which the ones I think are a little more believable, are especially that one way back, what was it, in the 50s, Shackleman. He was a night security guard at the St. Coletta Institution. And he claimed on his deathbed that he saw a werewolf. He saw a werewolf eating a chicken. Well, blurry visions don't eat chickens. Hungry animal creatures do. And so I would start there. And I think there are a lot of people investigating this stuff, but they get far out into believing the subject as opposed to allowing the subject to describe what happened. And the greatest of the paranormal shows, in my opinion, are In Search of, Unsolved Mysteries. A Haunting was pretty good. Some of the episodes of that were decently made. And but there really hasn't been, I don't think there's been a great mind at least in the world of television, that has allowed a new perspective on it. You know, one of the best werewolf movies of modern times, and I love how I guess they brought some subtleties into the situation and the philosophy of it, and was Wolf with Jack Nicholson, the Mike Nichols film. You know, that movie stood the test of time because essentially it's about a man aging who loses his position in the world and starts to lose his ambition. He loses his wife to a younger man, loses his job to that same younger man. And just previously to all these incidents, you know, Nicholson's character gets in a bit of a side swipe in the snow on his way home, and a wolf comes out of the woods and bites him. He slowly starts to change. It's increasing his abilities. I think the movie is quite a metaphor, you know, for finding your stride again in later ages, which a lot of people do. And there's a lot of ways you can find that youthful energy. You can tap into that wolf energy, okay, as what the movie's showing. But then there are people literally changing into werewolves in it. I think it's a great film. And it'll continue on. I think, you know, years from now, people continue to enjoy it and see it as one of the great werewolf subject movies. But this gentleman claims, and I didn't get into his origin story or where this started, because was there a baby wolf? Was he born a wolf? I don't know, you know. So he was showing me photos, and again, I keep an open mind because it might just be that gem. It might just be that one day somebody shows you proof, and you have to keep an open mind to that. So that's why you allow people to tell your story. And I don't think you should be anything but polite to people. However, the greatest of them all in regard to paranormal radio, right, podcasts, was Art Bell. It was a radio show. And he allowed people to tell their story, but he did ask questions. And sometimes, often, he would challenge people, but not in a rude way. And that's how we have to do it. We are the vessel for the audience. We should be asking questions, because if you have a big audience, and hopefully you do, right, that they have questions on their mind. And yeah, you know, there's a good deal of us that want to believe in the supernatural because we've experienced something, or it's just in our collective imagination, as Carl Jung referred to.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
You are listening to the Off to the Witch podcast, where we explore that bizarre borderline between fiction and reality and all subjects arcane. Journey over to my YouTube channel and subscribe now at youtube.com/@offtothewitch for a variety of extras and special features, including the Off to the Witch mini docs with further insights on many of the latest episodes, as well as previews and behind the scenes of my forthcoming investigative series, Off to the Witch Presents, as well as the anniversary edition of my motion picture documentary, Montauk Chronicles. And follow us on social media. All links are available at linktree.com/Garetano7, GARETANO7. And stay tuned for more Off to the Witch.
Whenever the moon is full, it's out there, in the shadows, in the fog, watching and waiting to strike. Now, from the master of mystery and suspense, Stephen King's Silver Bullet, the last glimmering hope. Stephen King's Silver Bullet, from Paramount Pictures, rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
It's all in our collective imagination and our collective desire. We do have this connection with the animal world. So when you have a man contacting you, a man that tells you he's a werewolf fascinates that part of us. So I'm at the stage where I'm just saying, okay, man, send me photos of what you think I should see. And he did. He sent me some photos of his incisors, being quite sharp and, some hair on his arms and stuff. But I have yet to see evidence of a werewolf just yet. And again, I'm remaining to keep an open mind. But to me, the most fascinating part of this is that there is a man that reached out to me to tell me he's a werewolf. Okay? I don't want to be in the same room as this gentleman, but I do want to interview him from a remote location. And the reason why I say that, the reason why I say I don't want to be in the same room as him, he seems like a pleasant enough guy, but at the same time, if he's a werewolf, I know how this ends, and I don't want to be around for that. Werewolves scared the hell out of me as a kid. Everything from The Howling to Silver Bullet to American Werewolf in London. Even the television show in the 80s, Werewolf, scared the hell out of me. I'm not going to sit in a room with someone who tells me they're a werewolf. But you have to ask questions. You must. If you cease from asking questions and just accept his story from the beginning, I believe you failed. As a host, as an investigator, you can't be sentimental because most likely, okay, in all spectrum of sanity, most likely someone that tells you they're a werewolf or they encountered a werewolf might have seen something that is not real or they're making it up. But there's that small chance, that perspective that, hey, if you've experienced one thing from the supernatural, is it not possible to experience another? When I was 14, there was a woman talking in a house that was not there. I've gone over this 1,000 times since I experienced that. Woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this woman whispering, and it went on, and it was no one in the house, no one that was doing it. There was no chance of it. It wasn't a radio. It wasn't anything. I knew even then that hearing that whispering was something out of the ordinary, something not of this world. So if that can happen, and that happened to me, then I consider other things. And of course, an elusive hominid that we have yet to prove 100% exists now, walking around in different forests around the world, is very believable to me. Humans don't know everything. We don't. But at the same time, when the scale tips to the other direction, and you have someone banking on telling you that every mythological beast is in abundance running around every day, I think you need to step back from that. You could do what you want, but if you enjoy this stuff, we're taking quality out of it, and now it's just self-serving for the person who's telling you all these stories, and that's not exciting to me. That's not interesting to me. So this werewolf that contacted me, the alleged werewolf, I'm interested in talking to him and having an honest conversation. I want to let him tell his story so you can hear it, so I can hear it, and then I guess we'll take it from there. I do have questions, and I do have some questions regarding lycanthropy, which is a true psychological, some people call it a disorder. It can be a psychological perspective, but there are people that believe they are shape-shifting werewolves, and this has occurred throughout history. There was no evidence of them actually shape-shifting, but they believed it, and some of them acted upon it. And in more archaic times, in more ancient times, people believe the serial killers of those days had that disorder or something like it. They were angry, ravenous, destructive, murderous people who acted upon their impulses, their animalistic impulses. Because if you enter the forest or you enter the jungle, there's nothing but murder everywhere you look. And a lot of people don't realize that you walk into the forest and it could be a serene experience, and most of the time it is. But if you look a little closer, you'll find a series of ants on the ground devouring another animal, murdering it. If you look up into the trees, there's more murder. If you look into the distance, there's a hunter shooting an animal, more murder. And however you want to see it, it still is, at the end of the day, murder. We live on a pretty brutal planet, but all together, it's all, I guess it's a litmus test of how you are and how you see it. You could see it as survival of the fittest. You can see it as nature taking its course, necessary. In the jungle and in the forest, for the most part, it is necessary. So getting back to those bears, that according to Fish and Wildlife, it's been proven that those bears killed that man and killed that dog, that it was not a werewolf, that it was not a dog man or an angry Sasquatch, that it was just a family of bear that were hungry and saw it as an opportunity to do something that really hasn't happened before that we know of. So maybe these anomalies do happen. Or, and I'll offer this, and I'll keep an open mind to this, it's possible that Fish and Wildlife knows for a fact that it wasn't the black bear that killed the man, that they couldn't explain it, and that maybe it was some dark and elusive creature walking around the forest. So, another thing I wanted to talk about that's interesting happening today, outside of all of the, the UFO claims and what seems to be exciting, that the government is letting out secrets of the UFOs and aliens that have been picked up from crashed anomalous craft falling from the sky. At the end of the day, I still feel like they haven't given us anything. They're telling us everything and giving us and showing us nothing. There's something fishy about some of this stuff to me. If they're putting on all this pageantry and all of these press conferences, and you have these experts and people who are involved revealing all of this stuff, why don't at the end of the day they just simply open up the books and show us if all of this stuff has been revealed? I am very suspect of all of that stuff. And in regard to the Kennedy assassination, it seems like those books are open too. Yet, same situation. They're saying that, wow, all of these files are being revealed. Now they're leaving it up to the public to go through thousands and thousands of pages themselves, as opposed to just simply coming out and telling us what happened in short, an abridgment of thousands of documents. That's the least they can do for us, right? As a society who's been manipulated. And I do, of course, believe in conspiracies. I've been covering them for a long time. And I've met with people from DARPA, and I've met with people from the CIA and former government, deep government operatives, sat down with them, talked with them, even not just in front of the camera for my shows, but over dinner, and had separate conversations that weren't being dictated by field managers or co-directors or whatever. And I've heard a lot of stuff. And I think the inner workings of the government are so compartmentalized that they do keep things away from people. They'll have you do one job, and that's all you're going to do. And they'll keep you in this doubtful place. And it's a mystery, because you'll have people come out and say, like said today, it was both Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, high-level government heads, just claimed that Jeffrey Epstein 100% committed suicide, whereas a lot of conspiracy theorists believe that he was murdered. I don't know what to think about that. It's very possible that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. I mean, his life was over, and maybe he didn't want to meet a worse fate. Maybe he didn't want to face the fate that was coming to him. Perhaps he would have been put in a certain situation in prison where, he would have been taken advantage of, like he took advantage of all those people. So, and, the man was a coward, so maybe he didn't want to face it. We really don't know. But I can tell you one thing. A lot of those people in those government positions do know. Don't forget that. And if there is a cover-up of werewolves and vampires and Bigfoot and all of that stuff, UFOs, these people know. They're not telling you, okay? Whatever they're telling you in the public is spin and dirty tricks. It's subterfuge. It's meant to distract you. Because what was concealed for a reason, and they're not going to blow those doors wide open. And if they were going to, it would have been. They would have first said, in short, what the verdict is, okay, in short, the abridgment of it, and then release all the pages for you to read. Well, they've done the inverse. They won't clarify what all those Kennedy papers say. And before I get to some of the news about the projects and what to expect this fall, I'll tell you one more story about when I was in Hong Kong, and I had an unfinished version of Montauk Chronicles with me at the Hong Kong Film Market, one of the biggest international film markets in the world. I was, I was in Hong Kong for, I think, about 2 weeks, and at the film market, I had a booth. Booth had a standee of a gray alien, the Montauk Chronicles alien that I have on the poster and the DVD and Blu-ray cover. On a television set, my trailer was playing on a loop, the trailer for the movie. And there were people that were very interested in the film, and I didn't know much about international sales. I learned when I was there and learned since then. But there were people ready to make offers for the film, and I really didn't even know what the asking prices were. And so I'm there, and it's running the trailer, and I'm talking to different people from different regions about their interest in my film. And this guy shows up, and he's an expat, United States, gentleman, out of place. And I had no idea why he was at Film Mart. Maybe he just had an interest in seeing what movies were being sold internationally. But he was there. He's standing near my booth for 20 minutes, staring at this trailer, playing on a loop. I think the trailer maximum was 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. Then he finally looks at me. He was an odd cat. He was really tall, had a long, unkempt beard and hair. And he walks up to me and he's like, they're not going to let you show this. I said, oh, well, who are they? And he said, well, you know. I said, well, maybe I know. I don't know. And, I said, here, I'm showing it. And he said, yeah, but they're not going to like it. He said, this is really interesting. I do believe this happened. I said, yeah, I'm leaning towards that myself. And then he was like, well, I'm a connoisseur, an expert on the Kennedy assassination. I said, yeah, obviously a lot of people believe there was something going on outside of what the public statement was, is that Lee Harvey Oswald was the only shooter and, he was just a lone madman. Well, there's a lot of information on the books that completely disproves that statement. And now it's suggesting with some of the information that's out there that it's true. And so one thing he started to assert about the Kennedy assassination and incidents surrounding it was that Officer J.D. Tippit, who on record was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald on Oswald's frantic transition over to the movie theater where he was eventually picked up by police, shot and killed. This gentleman that was standing by my booth in Hong Kong all day claimed that Officer Tippit was involved. I have not looked through the files that have been recently released, but I'm very curious to see if any of that supports this man's statement. Because this guy struck me as the type of guy who's kind of, that you would see these ancillary characters on the X-Files, that he'd be deep in a room somewhere sifting through information. His obsession, there was nothing else driving this man's obsession with the JFK assassination outside of that true interest that came from him. I don't believe he wrote a book since then. There were no podcasts to really speak of back then. There wasn't anyone scrambling for clicks and likes and stuff on YouTube. It was just this guy's true obsession. Those people are really interesting to me. Because I think if they're spending 24/7 looking into a subject and looking through the whole spectrum, like, for instance, if you believe in werewolves, you need to know the history around the world in every culture, okay? every possible incident on record. And you also have to be objective. You have to dispute some of this stuff. You can't just declare that every ridiculous monster that's been made up is real, and every person that tells you that they saw a monster is telling the truth. You can't do that. You can't. We lose something when that happens. Then we just spiral off into nowhere. No, there has to be foundation to this stuff. There must be. Because at the end of the day, if you are trying to prove it, you're not doing a very good job of it, because now you're just kind of allowing any silly story to be told. And I would lean towards the things that are more credible, have a little more weight to them in terms of information. So this gentleman, went on about Officer J.D. Tippett, and I think that would be something interesting to look into for those listeners out there. Like, kind of search that. I'm curious if any of that came up, because I would listen to a guy like that at that time and place in the world who really was doing a ton of personal research into the subject, probably for a number of years, probably following it since he was a kid in one way or another. So you have to look for those people, so well versed in the subject and a lot of personal insight. They seem to spend all their time on it. So I feel strongly that when you're interested in a paranormal, preternatural, or supernatural subject matter or arcane history, is that you should enter with plenty of objectivity, with respect to the subject matter and respect to your audience, especially if you're putting something out. And I'm taking a great lifetime of experience with me from childhood to now. I wasn't just sitting in a room and reading things on the internet. I went out and experienced things. I have experience in so many different situations. Those show episodes that you saw were very real in the sense that I did the research. I got into the situation. I wasn't some actor that was hired. And then all of the things I discovered on my own, and all of the things that are yet to be seen on one of my shows. This has been my true interest my whole life, but I always enter with objectivity. You have to. You must. Otherwise, you are selling snake oil, my friend, and it's not going to last too much longer, because I think the desire for quality is coming back. I hear these people state to extract quality from, let's say, paranormal programming is because it's real. Well, guess what? Quality is real. Craftsmanship is real. Great writing is real. Incredible storytelling is real. Honesty in interviews is real. And it's all coming back. And that's what we're bringing to the table with all of the shows that are coming under the White Phosphorus label, under Off to the Witch Presents. And after the release of A Haunting We Will Go this fall, right away, you'll get a trailer for The Terror Down South, which is the second feature-length episode of this new series of documovies. But you're also going to hear about the following 3 that are coming, that are now in pre-production, and will be right in production for those immediately. This is not about quantity, yet I'll be able to expedite the process a little bit, because it took a moment to put this format together. It took a moment to create something new. There's never been a show like this before, and I'm excited to get this out to you and the rest of the potential audience. It means something to me, because I could have done another network show in this realm, and I decided against it, because I don't want to be on someone else's train. I want to be on my own. And I want to invite everybody on that train with me and enjoy something fresh, because there was no way to really do it inside the system. I mean, even in some early development meetings with potential shows, new shows with networks, they were already tainting the subject. They were already trying to figure out the quick and easy way to do it, the silly way to do it. Their mantra was, when I was making Strange World, the audience is stupid. I heard that from a lot of people, and I just don't buy it. I don't believe in it. I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe you're stupid at all, and I'm not going to give you something stupid to cater to that. I believe the world's going to want quality again in their music, literature, movies, and there's a lot of great movies being made and great TV shows being made right now, some good music, and there's probably some incredible music out there, but it's not winning Grammys, So you have to change your perspective a little bit, and I think that's the age we're entering. this incredible age of self-publishing, which again, I've been financed by networks and I could do it again tonight, but I'm not interested in that. Why would I want to do that when I'm making the best quality show on the paranormal that I've ever seen right now? And I'm not just tooting my own horn. I know that it is. I've seen all of them. And either they're brand X versions of what you keep seeing on television, which is a waste in my opinion, or they're kind of like retro, badly made versions of what we used to see. Well, no, we have to take a step forward with it. Let's take the best of it and get the best out of ourselves, and I want to do that for you, and I am doing it. And this new team I'm hooking up with now that I've developed along the way, they're all interested in the same thing, and it's going to expand. I'll be directing a lot of these, but I won't be directing all of them. I'll be producing all of them. I'll be looking for a lot of new talent, ambitious people, intelligent people, creative people who want to work outside the system and make something amazing and be a partner in it. And so beginning in the fall, just to give you kind of a brief idea of what's going to happen, not only are the episodes going to come out, but there's going to be a ton of ancillary social media stuff coming out. And I want that stuff to be of quality too. And that's another reason why I haven't done the show on a regular basis. I didn't want to rush through it. I didn't want to just put something out there to put it out there. Hence another thing I'm just not doing for the money, This show means something to me, and giving you quality means something to me. So I, focused on what was important, and what's important is getting these shows out there. So on the YouTube channel, on the White Phosphorus Pictures YouTube channel, if you're not already a subscriber, you can go and check it out. There's going to be a ton of ancillary stuff coming that won't appear anywhere else. There'll be behind the scenes. There'll be new interviews. We have a live event coming up for Halloween as well. And I'll tell you more about that. I'm not revealing exactly what that is, but if I had the opportunity to consider that, and I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it unlike anyone else has. And I think you're going to be quite pleased at the situation and join us live. And if you can't join us live that night, you'll definitely visit it on its replay. But between that, a ton of behind-the-scenes stuff, new interviews, extended interviews, all that stuff's going to be on social media after. And I'm going to be everywhere promoting this thing. I have like 20 years of press contacts I'll be backtracking on and hitting everybody up. And a lot of people are asking me to come to their conventions. So I'll be attending some conventions forthcoming. I've never really been too big on that. But I'll do it to get the word out about the new show. And in terms of the new show's availability, instead of being isolated to 1 or 2 networks like my previous network shows were, it's going to be on 25 around the world, and it'll be very accessible to you. And the fact that you can turn your television on and just turn on one of the channels and watch it, that gets me excited. I'm very happy about that. The rest is how we're designing it. And so this is just the beginning. And I did want to check in with you, and I appreciate you joining in on the rant. I think the next interview that I'm going to do might be with this werewolf, the alleged werewolf, the guy that claims he's a werewolf. And of course, I'm not here to make fun of anyone. I have a very open mind. I believe sometime in history, maybe something like that did happen. And there's some people who are very sincere about their experiences. One of the episodes of the new show does cover this subject to a degree, but in a way you haven't seen. I wanted to start this new series by offering these kind of overdone subjects, but in a way you haven't seen in a very long time, and in a way you've never seen, a combination of both. These subjects are beloved to a lot of us because we love the mystery, and we love the history of it all, and we love how these things have affected us in fiction and in alleged true stories over the years. But I don't like how it's being portrayed. And I have a variety of very unique subject matter, but I wasn't starting with that. So the first 5 documentaries are on more familiar subjects, yet They've never been done this way. And in my opinion, haven't been done right. So I'm going to be bringing the best show on the paranormal to you. And I'm confident that it is. And I've seen everything on the subject. It has been my interest since I was a child, and I have read everything on the subject that's worth reading. I know how to translate this to the screen, and I know what I want. And what I don't want is quantity over quality. I don't want that. So you'll be getting, in the beginning, you'll be getting about 3 of these a year. And then as my team expands, there'll be more. And but the quality will exceed anything you're seeing, because that's our goal with this always. It's never to slap these things out. It's never to just rush them out and get them done, because that's the schedule we were on for the networks, and they had millions to spend. Yet at the end of the day, it didn't change the face of the world of the paranormal. But I believe that perspective can be forged outside of the system and now brought back into the system, because the distribution walls have fell and the audience just wants something good. They don't care where it comes from. They don't care who made it. They don't care how much money's behind it or what awards it's winning. That's all a farce. That's a ruse. If all you're interested is winning awards at these things, my question is to someone like that, why is that your validation? Why is it not the experience that the people who have connected with it are having, that you have with it? Those are the 2 most important things. You can have a quarter of your audience. Let's say they're not even a quarter. Let's say they're 5%, but they're very vocal, that hate your work, right? For whatever reason. It could be under false pretenses. It could be disingenuous. But then a good deal of them connect with it the way you intended it. And you're doing well with it, and it's reaching people, and people are talking about it around the world, and you are confident that you made the thing you wanted to make. I'm sorry, but I've won awards for my work, and those awards mean nothing in comparison to what I just described. So whatever you're doing in the world, forget some other person's award that they are saying, hey, your stuff's not valid unless I validate it with my rinky-dink award show. No, that's not true. That's bullshit. And you stick to your guns as a movie maker. Believe in what you're doing. Reach your audience. The gatekeepers are gone. The walls of distribution have fell and have opened up at the same time. And nothing's restricted. For instance, where I wanted to do some edgy things with Strange World, I was restricted, of course. They had to be very careful about certain things. I get it. But in the Terror Down South, or in some of these other episodes, I can be as edgy and as brutal as I want to be about certain things. And I'm the regulator. I'm the person deciding what it's going to be. And for an artist and for a filmmaker and a writer and an essayist and a thinking person, there's nothing better than that when you're creating. It's tantamount to you being a painter and someone walking up to you while you're painting your masterpiece and holding your wrist and saying, no, 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 no. I can't work like that. I won't work like that. I have worked in that way, and it was a wrestling match. It's hard enough to make these things. And on a breakneck schedule, literally 17-hour days, 7 months straight, that then you have someone guiding your hand. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So for the creators out there, and I think this should be exciting for the people that love this stuff too, is that I encourage the creators out there to understand the freedom that you have and take advantage of that. And don't covet these awards and don't covet this position on television. I've had it. I'm telling you, it's not what it's cracked up to be. If you really, look, if all you want is attention and you want to get famous, I have no truck with you. You're not in the same world, and we don't exist in the same way of thinking. And if all you're doing is craving fame, go get it. But I don't care about that shit. And I care about what I'm giving to you, what I'm creating, what I'm leaving behind long after I'm gone, and how people are going to experience it, and how it will open the mind and the consciousness of the viewer and my mind when I'm making it. So at the end of the day, whether it be fiction or it be these shows on the paranormal subject, I'm making something that means something to me, no matter what. Not chasing a dollar. I've spent years on my projects intentionally, spending money, not making it. And, I've made money, but that was, I think, can be attested to the quality of the work when it's finished, or I was paid to do certain things for the same reason. They saw my previous work and they wanted to hire me to do something similar. But too many cooks spoil the soup. So I thank you for listening to my rant tonight. This whole thing means the world to me. The fact that you're even listening to me right now means the world to me. And I wanted to give you something tonight and say a few things about what we're doing and what we've done. And I don't ask for forgiveness if you completely disagree with everything I'm saying, because I know I'm right. I know I'm right about this. I know I'm right about quality over quantity. I know I'm right about the intentions of some of these people that are, pulling your leg for a few bucks online. So I only want to deliver quality with this show. There might be an episode between now and the fall, but there's going to be a ton of stuff in the fall. And so just stay tuned. Keep an eye on my social media. The websites are going to come back up. It is currently the 10th anniversary of Montauk Chronicles, so you can expect some stuff to celebrate that a little bit later this year. It is the 20th anniversary of my very first documentary horror business. And, it was a little tiny, raw documentary shot on videotape that made its way into distribution. My hero filmmaker, George Romero, loved it and invited me up to Canada on the set of Diary of the Dead, which I spent some time with him as a result of that documentary. It was celebrated and written about in magazines, and it was in a ton of film festivals around the world. And once Image Entertainment, the license ran out, I've kept it in kind of a moratorium for a little while. But I looked at it not that long ago, and the story is essentially just a very raw character profile on a bunch of very truly independent filmmakers. When I hear so-called independent filmmakers say, all we had was a $6 million budget, I laugh. Truly independent filmmakers working maybe with $300, And I made this 20 years ago, and I was in the same situation. All I had was a video camera, a tripod, and at times a microphone. So a shotgun mic. But it has a great spirit to it. And, it's very different from the things I've made since. And, of course, on television and now. And I've learned a lot in 20 years. But it's an honest profile, I think. And it's very punk rock. So check it out. You'll hear more about that, too, if you follow anything I do. It's a fun little documentary about a bunch of different, very independent horror movie makers, people who have that deep sentimental connection to the genre. And are very rough around the edges, as I was as well. So I hope you enjoy everything that's forthcoming. There's a lot of stuff coming. And get ready for the best show on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the arcane ever made. It's coming beginning this fall, and I can't wait to share it with you. And so stay tuned, everybody. And thanks for listening to my rant tonight. I'll see you next time.